Judiciary Committee this Friday morning, March 27th, and we're looking, continuing our review of the amendment to H 937 by Representative McGuire. Brought this a couple days ago. It's an amendment to the miscellaneous bill. I've been working with Eric and Michelle and Ian and Angela have helped out some as well to try to come up with something that we can move forward with, given the input that we received when we first looked at the draft from Representative McGuire. He would be in here right now, but he has a bill that he has to report. We've been given leave of the House to be out of off the floor to take up some testimony on H 937's amendment. But we'll start with the walkthrough. Michelle, thank you for being here. And thank you for all your work the last 24 hours on this.
No problem at all. So for the record, Michelle Childs, Office of Legislative Counsel, and everybody should have a copy of draft 3.1 of the McGuire amendment. So I'm going to just give you a brief walkthrough, since I know you really want to hear from your witnesses about what they think about it. So it's adding 10 new sections to miscellaneous judiciary. It's all session law, so nothing is being put in statute. It's similar, there's a lot of similarities to the earlier version, one of them being that it's just for a 2-year period. So then there's a repeal. So that's all the same, and that's why it's in session law. So section 31 are findings. I don't think I necessarily need to walk you through theirs. You can, unless you want me to, but you can read those yourself.
Michelle, can you walk through them?
Sure.
That'd be great.
Sure, no worries. So subdivision 1 is at the Pilot Accountability Court in Chittenden County, which was referred to as the Pilot Accountability Court. Was a project proposed by the governor and implemented by the judiciary in collaboration with the various stakeholders. Subdivision 2 is that the docket helped clear a backlog of repeat offender criminal cases involving individuals with 5 or more open charges, many of whom were unhoused and struggling with mental health and perhaps substance misuse issues. The docket brought together judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and human services staff to resolve cases faster and connect those individuals with services that could be helpful to them. Subdivision 3 at the bottom of page 1, the docket achieved a clearance rate of approximately 300%, or roughly 3 times the judiciary's typical clearance rates. Moving on to page 2, subdivision 4. More importantly, repeat offenders were held accountable to the court for complying with conditions of release, with orders to connect with service providers, and appearing for scheduled court hearings. And subdivision 5 is at each county that determines that employing a proportional model of a rapid accountability docket that takes into account the unique needs and resources of the county should have the opportunity to operate such a docket.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So section 32, this is new. This is not something that was contained in the earlier versions. And this is kind of stating the purposes of a rapid accountability docket. So you'll see there it's stating the goals of these dockets. So subdivision 1 is accelerating court proceedings for repeat offender cases by ensuring consistent and timely availability of judicial resources. Subdivision 1B is dedicated prosecutorial and defense resources. C is the availability of resources from DOC and AHS. And D is sufficient transport services for detained individuals. The next, subdivision 2, the next purpose is connecting individuals with treatment, housing, and social services to reduce the circumstances that might be contributing to recidivism. 3 is reducing the number of pending criminal cases that involve individuals with multiple dockets by providing targeted resources for a limited amount of time to improve the overall efficiency of the courts and utilize the known deterrent effect of consequences that are close in time to the alleged offense. 4 is improving accountability for individuals with multiple pending legal cases by providing immediate follow-up and a court schedule that is more responsive to their needs. And 5 is improving collaboration among law enforcement, prosecutors, and social workers to provide a faster resolution in repeat offender cases. So those are the goals, and you'll see in the following sections, there'll be some references to those purposes. So section 33 is county deployment strategy. So here, the executive director of DSAS, in consultation with the chief superior judge, the defender general, and the secretary of AHS, are to identify the order in which the counties are to employ a rapid accountability docket. And then at least 30 days prior to one of those dockets starting in a county, the state's attorney in that county would convene all the stakeholders together to assess the needs and resources within that particular county to develop a plan to implement an accountability docket in accordance with the goals that we just went through. So there's, I think the goals here were to provide somewhat of a structure and facilitate these, but provide some flexibility for each county to be looking at what they have available, how many people are eligible for this type of docket, and for the local folks to be determining really what do they need and what should it look like in that particular county, because every county is likely to be a little bit different. So section 34, we're at the bottom of page 3, is the dedicated court space and judiciary staff. The chief superior judge is to assign a sitting or retired judge to each rapid accountability docket and provide a dedicated courtroom and administrative staff to implement the plan for each county. Page 4 at the top, subsection B. Each operating period is to last up to 90 days, but can be shorter if the goals of the docket are reached earlier, as determined by the state's attorney in consultation with the judge and the public defender. And each docket is to give priority to defendants with 5 or more pending cases, but the state's attorney or the public defender can request to include other defendants with fewer than 5 pending cases where faster action would serve the interest of justice. So it's going to be focused on that, but if they find that they have room for and it will help to be addressing some other individuals, then they can include those. Section 35 is dedicated prosecutor and lead public defender. Subsection A is that the governor, in consultation with the respective state's attorney and executive director of DSAS, can appoint a special prosecutor, or the state's attorney of the particular county can appoint a designated deputy state's attorney to serve the docket. Subsection B is to the extent resources allow. DSAS is to ensure victim advocates and administrative staff are available to support victims and efficient operation of the prosecutor. I don't like the way that's phrased. I might change that, Sarah, right? Sounds like it's kind of, right? Subsection C, line 18, as the DG is to identify a lead public defender for each accountability.
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe I'm missing kind of like the subliminal messaging, but why would you change that language?
To support victims and the efficient operation of the prosecutor.
Why does that need to be changed?
It just kind of sounds like it's a particular person, the efficiency of that particular person. I think it's more of the process or the prosecution instead of the prosecutor.
Okay, it just seemed that there was an understanding that I was missing. Thank you. And we can have ask Kim McManus to just weigh in on that phrase as well. Okay.
Subsection C, as I mentioned, the Defender General has to devote resources. Page 5, section 36, executive branch resources, is the governors to ensure adequate resources from the various agencies that have a part in this program. Recognizing that each county will have different needs. And then you have a list there, and I think these are the same as what was in the earlier draft. So DOC is to assign a liaison to each docket, DSAS, local law enforcement, DMV, DPS, and DOC, in collaboration with the sheriff's office, are to ensure timely transports. Secretary of AHS is to assign staff to each docket to address the complex needs of certain defendants. Subsection B, the governor, in consultation with the Secretary of AHS, DSAS, and the Chief Prevention Officer, are to designate a rapid accountability docket coordinator to track the data and assist with deployment of resources. The docket coordinator is to identify best practices and monitor the data during and beyond the initial implementation period to ensure that information is maintained and distributed to evaluate the programmatic efficiency of the programs. Then you'll see next in section 37 are the requirements around data collection, and that's going to be kind of collected and reported by the docket coordinator. So you see starting on line 7, it's the number of defendants served, the number of cases resolved and types of outcomes, the number of defendants connected to services and the types of those services, the number of times each defendant appeared in court for the docket, the number of probation or furlough violations of the defendant's sentence through the docket within 6 and 12 months. And so that's not about things that are before the court on the docket, but if they're sentenced to a term of probation, they're kind of tracking once they've been sentenced, then how many times are there probation or furlough violations in a 6 or 12-month review. And 6 is the number of defendants charged with a new offense within 6 or 12 months and the types of offenses.
Where did this language come from? Section 37.
It was originally in Representative McGuire's proposal, and there were some recommendations for a couple additions that came from DSAS.
And were all of these captured in the Chittenden County Accountability Board?
I don't know.
Yeah, as witness. Not as witness.
So section 38, reporting requirements. So subsection A is that DSAS, Defender General, AHS, and the Judiciary are to appear before the Justice Oversight Committee this summer at its August meeting and give a little update, report progress, say how things are going. Then moving on to page 7, subsection B is that on or before December 1st of this year, the docket coordinator is to submit a written report regarding the implementation of the rapid accountability dockets as of that time. And there's to submit that to the House and Senate committees on Judiciary as well as the governor. Section 39, something you've probably seen in some other bills, which is the duty to implement is contingent upon the availability of funds that are appropriated in 2027. And section 40 is your repeal of all of those sections as of July 1st of 2028. So it's a 2-year program.
Actually, I have a question, and it may actually be for Trevor Squirrel.
For who?
Who happens to be here. So I just had a question for you that I just caught just now. This is on our section 39 contingency funding, which says the duty to implement the sections of this act is contingent upon the availability of funds appropriated in fiscal year 2027. Would that include the BAA funds? Or do we need different language to make sure that that includes?
You probably want to reference the BAA. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we will make that change. Yeah. I understand now. That's where the funds are for.
Available funds in this project currently, that's where.
So you can figure out the language on this. Any other questions? Any questions from Michelle? Not seeing any questions. Judge, are you prepared to I'll have the judge join us?
And Terry, please.
Yeah, please. Judge and Terry, you have who was the working group again for this? It was Angela, Ian, and me primarily.
Good morning.
I said that.
Tom Sonny, Chief Superior Judge.
Yeah, and actually Tom as well.
So
I've had a chance to look at this. I know Terry has some comments also that she can offer. On page 3, section 33 talks about the county deployment strategy. As currently worded, that has essentially the executive director of the Department of State's attorneys deciding where the docket will be held. Decisions as to what courts are going to hold what dockets should rest with the judiciary. And so I would suggest that this say that on line 11, shall recommend to the judiciary the counties which shall recommend to the judiciary the order in which the counties should employ a rapid accountability docket. I would note as a practical matter, those are discussions that we've had. And so that's something that I have full confidence we will be able to reach agreement even with the court making that decision. Section 34, it should on line 20 where it says each rapid accountability docket, it should say, and the Supreme Court administrator. The court administrator shall provide a dedicated courtroom. And instead of administrative staff, it should say court staff and security, which is what would be needed. On the following page, page 4, lines 1 through 7, it talks about 90 days, but maybe shorter if the state's attorney, in consultation with the judge and the public defender, it should be as determined by the judiciary in consultation with the state's attorney and public defender. The court should be in charge of deciding how long the dockets run with that input. And beyond that, I think Terry may have had some comments on some matters.
No, I think actually did cover the comments, and I was going to make other thing to say. We really appreciate the responses to the concerns that were raised in previous testimony, and especially the each of us done.
But yeah,
Just to clarify on, I think on line 2 of page 4, Judge Zoney said that it should be as determined by, did you suggest the chief superior judge and the state's attorney? Or
Maybe shorter if the goals are met as determined by, it could be by the judiciary in consultation with the SA and public defender. That allows, that would bring in, if you will, Terry, myself, and the judge as a policy decision. If you want it just to be the judge, whoever's sitting there to make that decision, but it should be made by the judiciary representative.
Any questions? No other questions for the judge. So if we can hear from Department of State's attorneys, if you're ready to weigh in.
Morning.
Good morning.
For the record, Kim McManus, Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. Thank you for the rapid work that's been done. This draft really seems to balance the need for this to be county focused while providing some structure and some goals that we want to see in every county, but being able to right size to the county. Our department, quick read from our executive director's office, we support this amendment. We absolutely hear the judiciary's concerns that were just raised. As long as we're in consultation with the decisions, I think we would be fine. I'm sure our state's attorneys would be happy to be the ones making all those decisions, but we would understand that might not be quite the right process. But we would leave that to you all to decide. The question raised Representative Harvey about reporting. Do you want me to address that question?
Could you all, before you get to that, comment
sure.
on page 4, line 16, 17, you just and the efficient operation of the prosecutor, if you can weigh in on that. If that's needed, it needs to be changed. It doesn't seem.
When we read it, we understood the objective there. I think it could be reworded to the efficient operation of the
Prosecutor.
That's fine. We had the prosecution, we had no issue. That didn't jump out at us. I can understand while reading it out loud why Michelle paused, but it wouldn't impact how we
Okay.
would be staffing this. I'm sorry, Representative Harvey, did you want me to note
That's
that
fine.
piece?
I don't-
Well, then I will note it only because it's of interest to us. We, we had a lot of data that was captured during the pilot program, and that was spearheaded by Zach Waite, the special prosecutor, who did such a wonderful job with that and he has that brain. We very much, as I mentioned yesterday, we like the idea of having one person tracking this data throughout and not having it be prosecutor led. And we very much like the idea of tracking the data after the fact, right? We want to know the impact of that. And again, having that in sort of real time, as this is moving around counties, but then looking back at the counties where it's been. So we had suggested some of those additions to the tracking data, and we appreciate those being added. But we are in support of this amendment.
Any questions? Not seeing any. If we could be joined by Jay Johnson. Thank you. Jay.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you for being available.
Sure. Again, Jay Pershing Johnson, Governor Scott's Council. So I do have, and I did get some feedback from our AHS partners in the courtroom in Rutland County, which indicates to me that the issues with the very short time frame, and we don't have to go into those today. But I think it informs my comments to the draft, which largely are that having a system where the judiciary decides county by county what the structure will look like, and then every other party is expected to adapt to that schedule. It's not necessarily an efficient or particularly productive use of resources. So say, for example, in Rutland County, when you have a very high need, a population that needs a high touch approach, similar to what we had in Chittenden County, 1 day a week is basically a schedule where maybe the human services folks will have one contact with an individual, because the focus, given the short time frame, is on moving cases. And they are doing what they can and adapting aggressively to the short time frame. But there's only so many days and hours devoted to this. And there's only so much that they can do in terms of ensuring appropriate contact with the defendants, right? So there is that practical reality, and it likely will move some cases faster. But it's not at all clear that with a high needs service resistant population like they have in Rutland, that actually Rutland has also actually been using bail as a tool. Another factor that feeds into this is Chittenden had not been using bail as a tool, and actually was an incentive for a lot of people to actually, if you were released into the community and you weren't succeeding there, bail would be imposed, you would move into the facility. Here, you have a population that apparently bail is not much of an incentive. And so they're trying to adapt to the reality of the shorter time frame and some other things. Another thing would be the shorter time frame necessitated the starting with individuals in the DOC facilities. In Chittenden, they started with individuals in the community, and it was much more effectively, the human services folks could much more effectively address the needs with the tools they had. So we are doing what we can, but I guess my larger point is it's not sustainable. So to the extent you create this in a way that leaves the discretion of the court to create what the docket looks like. And I completely appreciate the point that Judge Zone made about the need for the judiciary to make those determinations. But I can't commit the resources of the executive branch to a system that is, not going to be reliably sort of constructed in any particular county, with the expectation that all of those executive branch resources will be brought to bear regardless of what the court looks like, right? I mean, that's the problem. That's the issue we're grappling with. So I can give you my comments to the draft, and I do really appreciate it. I think that the work that was done was great. I think that you made a real effort I like the findings were generally pretty similar. On page 2, line 4, I would say that proportional is not a good word. I would say replicable, because proportional can mean a whole lot of different things to different people. So
That's line 4.
yes. Proportional is maybe what some people see we did in Rutland, but because there are fewer cases. But I think that proportional is not a realistic or appropriate measure of what is needed in Rutland County. Then employing a replicable model of a rapid accountability court that addresses the unique needs and resources of the county, because that was really the point of bringing the executive branch resources to bear. We address the weaknesses in those counties. So it takes into account, I guess, potato. It's your call. Then we get to the docket, the purpose, which I also really appreciated, and I think you did a great job on that. So thank you for that. I would say in line 17, number 2, connecting individuals with treatment, housing, and social services to appropriately address the circumstances that may contribute to recidivism. Because again, I think the point of this whole exercise is to address those problems, not simply, again, maybe potato. In the end, you're reducing the circumstances. But I think what we're trying to get at is addressing the underlying circumstances that contribute to recidivism. Then in the last line there, 20, I think I would remove the by providing targeted resource. I would keep by providing targeted resources. I would remove for a limited period of time. While this is definitely a surge of resources, the goal is to end up with sentences that actually are much longer term. They're getting people into appropriate treatment resources and then recovery resources and potentially something like recovery housing. Those were the kinds of things that were being lined up longer term for the individuals in Chittenden, and I think could be in other counties as well. So then on page 3, the line, to continue there with that same sentence, to improve the overall efficiency of the courts, I would say, and the criminal justice system or something to that effect, because while the overall efficiency of the courts is critical, the backlog and the efficiency of the courts is so relevant to the ability of every other stakeholder in the criminal justice system to do their jobs well. So as the backlog increases, and each state's attorney has over 300 cases, and each defender has over 200 cases, et cetera, right? So it's really, to the extent you can improve the efficiency of the courts, you can absolutely improve the efficiency of the other stakeholders.
I think changing that to criminal justice system instead of courts makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Okay. Then you have the number 4. This seems minor, but to me, they have some relevancy to what we're trying to do. In line 4, improving accountability for individuals with multiple pending legal cases by providing immediate follow-up and a court schedule that is responsive to their needs. I would take out more responsive to their needs, because I take out more because what's happening now is not responsive to their needs. Something slightly better is more responsive to their needs. What we're trying to do is be responsive to their needs is the significance I would attach to the word more. I would also in line 6, number 5, say improving collaboration among the courts, law enforcement, prosecutors, and social workers to provide faster resolution of repeat offender cases. the court here is absolutely essential to the success of these outcomes. So I think to the extent the court is working with these stakeholders in the courtroom, that's how you're getting your better results. So the county deployment strategy, I really liked. I could have anticipated the judiciary's response, and I get that. But what's key about it, finding a path forward, I think in this section, is the plan that's referred to in section 34 on line 21. These stakeholders all come together to come up with, and I would say I would delete in line 11, I would delete the order in which the counties, so I don't think it's the order so much as the counties. So shall identify the counties. It won't be every county. Like the idea that was discussed yesterday about, well, how are we going to do Essex County? I mean, there are some counties that they're not even asking for it and don't think that it's appropriate. So I think those kinds of red herring got tossed around a little yesterday, and I don't think that that is an issue so much. But if you have a process for identifying which counties, and that's why I said, so what I would say is, shall identify the counties seeking to employ a rapid accountability docket. So essentially you have this little body of deciders who are hearing the outreach from the counties. Typically, I would imagine the governor's office hears it first, but to the extent the court hears it, this is a good group for deciding which counties are appropriate and in what order, but that is something, with respect to preparation, and, that will be an ongoing conversation probably to see sort of within 30 days, because then you say at least 30 days before a court starts, the state's attorney shall convene the stakeholders to assess needs. I think there has to be some assessment of needs prior to that time, but there has to be some at least 30 days prior preparation for the court. And that's where, so I do really like this idea of a multi-stakeholder decider group, but developing a so-called plan, and that's not used in 33, but I like how it's used in 34. That wording to me and parity across the branches will be very important. So if the judiciary is responsible for development of the plan, and the plan is to have court 1 day a week plus every other week, that then is what everything keys off of. So the judiciary decides how many people are necessary to implement the plan, but you can't expect the executive branch, and I guess I'm really looking at 36 on page 5.
Or should I wait?
Yeah, I'm not entirely following.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Angela.
So do you understand what I'm saying?
Can you point to where you see in here that it's saying that the judiciary develops the plan?
Oh, I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. To the extent the judiciary had that edit in their comments before.
I think that was just regarding the counties and the order.
I think it was just about the assigning the judge, and I don't see anywhere in here that says the judiciary comes up with a plan. I see that it's the on line 13 and page 3, the state's attorney in each respective county shall convene stakeholders in the county to assess needs and resources within the county to develop a plan. It's really that's really the local stakeholders.
Yeah. If we can develop language that the judiciary can agree to, that would be great. And so I think that needs some clarity.
So let me, I guess, all right, well, I'm not sure. I'm still not following, because I think it's the first sentence that we're talking about the judiciary being, making the decision of the order and perhaps also which counties are going to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the judiciary is the decider there.
Okay.
And it's that group is in the second sentence, headed by the state's attorney or convened by the state's attorney, that's going to come up with the plan.
Well, so again, if this means that this group, this 30-day group decides the appropriate number of days in the courtroom, that would be, and this group decides, or somebody is designating the judge, right? In 34, the judge is assigned to implement the plan. If the 30-day group here is developing a plan that determines that 4 days a week is appropriate, or that, say, 5 days a week is appropriate for the first month and a half, and then the next month and a half is 3 days a week. If that is something the judiciary can agree to, I would love language that says that, and that would give us a great basis for moving forward. So that's my question for the judiciary. But that is kind of what I would be looking for, some parity of what that means in terms of allocating resources. Right? Because we are prepared to step up and do this 5 days a week because there's a model that works. We are hearing that that is not appropriate in other counties. That remains to be seen. But I do think that to the extent that the judiciary is going to be calling the shots on, without reference to the needs of, to the effectiveness of the input of the executive branch, then we also need to have some say in whether, it's sustainable to participate in whatever it is they've come up with. You see what I'm saying there?
See what you're saying, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with it, but I
So
understand.
you're thinking that whatever, so like Rutland, 1 day a week, every other Tuesday, 3.5 hours a week. That is something that our human services folks are saying, we're working on it. We don't think one touch is going to be effective for this population, but we are throwing everything we have at it, right? So it's going to cost a tremendous amount of money. It's requiring all kinds of staff at AHS to jump through hoops. But we don't have anything to say about the structure of the court. All we have to do is show up and try and bend over backwards to effectuate the services piece. Is that the expectation of the committee?
No, my expectation is that if this group gets together and they say that it's 5 days a week for that period of time, that's what the court is going to have to do under Section 34.
Correct.
And that's the intent of this. And there's also an important check back to the joint justice oversight, which comes later, to make sure that this is in fact happening that way.
Great, that is perfect.
So I just don't think it's needed. And we have the check back to make sure, so.
So
I would just want clarity would be the only thing.
I'm wondering, it seems like the governor wants to see outcomes. And so in a way, having the ability to say, like, we don't have to be involved in every minor decision, but we're holding you to producing these outcomes. That's what we're investing in, and making sure that there's a tie between the outcomes that the governor is expecting. Because it's almost like the governor is contracting with this group to do work that will deliver the outcomes that happened in Chittenden County or even better, and making the tie into that rather than the everyday minutia. And I like what Martin just said, but I'm just wondering again, like if people went off and started doing different things, it's like, wait a minute, that's not what we paid you for, or this isn't working. Like, we're not going to keep doing this. What's going on here?
Yeah, right. But I'm not sure what you're saying exactly. I'm thinking, if you're thinking about the 2-branch effort, we do have to collaborate if we want the kinds of outcomes that we would like to see. And we could, that's the key there, I think. And I guess the question is that possible from a drafting perspective? And maybe it is. I completely agree with what the chair just said. That should be exactly what we're expecting.
That's the anticipation, and maybe it's for the goals. And it goes with respect to the executive branch resources, prosecutorial, and defense.
So that's why I have a few edits that follow along those lines. So to the extent that the court is, I would just then say,
Which page are you on? Just
right now I'm on page 3 still. And find the court administrator and court staff and security to implement the plan for the respective county. I think that's important language to be applied to every other stakeholder. So when you get to, so we're not there yet, but what comes up first is the 90-day period. Each operating period shall last up to 90 days. I don't think you need that, but maybe shorter, because up to 90 days is 0 to 90. So that, I mean, but you can leave it whatever you want. So
I want to make sure that it's not like 10 days or something. It's got to be, if you achieve your goals, then it could be shorter. And that's.
So I would say each operating period shall last up to 90, as needed to meet the goals of the rapid accountability docket, as determined by, and the thing about the Chittenden docket was it was very often the judge in consultation with the prosecutor and the public defender. They had a lot of time to develop really good working relationships. And so I have a lot of confidence that that could work in that setting. So that was my only suggestion there. And then, so this is the first time that this plan concept comes up. So in B, 35B, which is line 14 on page 4, I would say, again, to the extent resources allow, I think I would take that language out because you have that language at the end. So it would say the executive director of the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs and the state's attorney shall dedicate, rather than ensure, because there is no assurance by the courts, shall dedicate victim advocates and administrative staff sufficient to implement the plan for the respective county. And that takes out the problematic language about victims and efficient operation, because we know what they do. They support advocates, they support victims, and they support the operation of the prosecutor. So I guess I would just have that say, again, dedicate victim advocates and administrative staff sufficient to implement the plan for the respective county. And to the extent you have a working group deciding together what that looks like, you should have, people should be agreeable to the, and if you can't work it out in the 30-day group, you can't work it out. That's another, I think, sort of test of how well we can work together to make these things work. And then the same thing for C, line 18, same sort of test. So, line 19, accountability court docket and coverage sufficient to implement the plan for the respective county. Then executive branch resources. Similarly, I would say the governor shall dedicate resources from all these sources sufficient to implement the plan for the respective county. And then I would take out all of those specifics because
so tell me exactly where on the line or where.
So line 2. You would say the governor shall dedicate, and then you would delete the language on line 5, starting with R at the very, very end, and then delete lines 6 and 7, and simply insert sufficient to implement the plan for the respective county. And then delete 8 through 16, because that's really up to the governor to determine sufficient to implement the plan.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
This just led right into what I was thinking. Is there going to be a lot of time spent setting up this plan but very little time to implement this plan with, like it was 5 days a week up there and now it's very little time and to actually do the actual work and setting up the necessary people we need and all that stuff. It seems like that's wasting a lot of time.
Well, I think that if the 30 days is appropriate, if you get it started, if you get those conversations rolling, and I think some of them are rolling, is sufficient. And if you're working with the group of stakeholders identified in this bill, so you have AHS at the table, working with the court and the prosecutor and the defender general on what that next quarter is going to look like. So I think that they have to, seems to me, and that's again why I think it needs some clarity, they would have to agree on the plan. And to the extent AHS say could not agree, it would be feasible to participate on a certain kind of schedule in a particular county, well, then they would be part of that conversation. And I think 30 days is fine because what follows is the court itself is 90 days, up to 90 days.
So just to be clear in my head, are too many entities involved in this already to get things done?
I think you need these entities at the table. So when Rutland was established and we kept hearing about the stakeholder group, I don't know that our office was never involved except for one time, and we were told what the plan was. So I think that as this moves forward, some greater collaboration like we had in Chittenden County would be helpful, more productive in my mind.
So just to finish up on my way of thinking,
Yeah.
the executive branch has to be, you're sending all sorts of resources, taxpayers' money
And we're committing to that because we saw that it's a system. It was a program that actually worked.
Right. So are you comfortable that the executive branch is involved enough in this or no?
So I guess my concern is the opposite, is I don't want the executive branch resources committed to the extent that our participation is simply not sustainable, right? Because of the way that the courts are choosing to operate the rapid accountability court. I think that if this section 5(3) works the way that the chair articulated it, I think that would be great, right? You need to have, if you have the state's attorney in the county convening the group to discuss needed resources, I can get comfortable with that.
I think we were saying the same thing, just different words.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry.
So then I would delete lines 8 through 16, and the executive branch would have the same leeway to assign resources that is basically allocated to everyone else.
So I guess if we're going to do that, I think we could be more general elsewhere, like for instance, for the court, we could simplify that to make sure there's much discretion as we would be giving to the executive branch, saying that the judge shall dedicate sufficient resources to implement the plan in the respective county instead of, the details are added for the court, but we're taking away the details of the executive branch.
Well, not exactly. You still have a pretty long laundry list there of state resources. So you can articulate.
Reading 88 through 16.
You see A, lines 2 through 5. Those are the resources being brought to bear. You could specify, if you want to continue to specify the role of each of those resources, then I think we could do that in the section for the judiciary as well.
Angela.
Yeah, I'm not really comfortable with taking out lines 8 through 16, seeing as we're talking about replicating and replicable, and like this is like the good stuff. These are all the things that really, these were the added elements that really made the difference.
If the court was running, yes.
Well, I mean, in the model, if we call the pilot program a model,
Mhm.
I would be really concerned about just taking all of this specificity out when we're saying we're trying to replicate the model.
Okay, I can live with that, right? We have dedicated these resources. We are standing by to dedicate the resources. We don't have a place to dedicate them. We have one day a week to dedicate them somewhere, right? But we are learning that for a high touch, high population, high needs population, one day a week is not sufficient. So we can continue to, for a period of 2 years, allocate all of these resources to a working court, or, like I said yesterday, if you just want to move cases, you don't need the executive branch at all. If you want to move them in an effective way, you have to set up the court to work in an effective way. So we are committed to dedicating these resources, and I don't object to this language, but I am thinking that to the extent we have this commitment, everyone should be, right? There needs to be a parity of the level of commitment.
Yeah, and and so I hear that, and I think what's challenging is the focus on the Rutland experience and the 1 day thing, and that may not have been the right way to go. But then I'm also hearing there wasn't even a defender available the other 4 days, like a defense attorney. So
Well, that isn't what I
I
heard.
don't think it was other 4 days, but there were some other problems.
there were
But
conflicts.
No, we can identify, I can tell you that even for the Chittenden experience, lots of problems were identified and overcome, right? So we can choose to overcome them, or we can choose to throw up a lot of problems. And that is always possible. And I'm sure the executive branch is like, the chief offender in that area, but we are in this instance, really trying to problem solve, right? I mean, I would hope we have shown in good faith that we have done that with a successful model and trying to replicate it in Rutland. So I'm just saying it's the parity, there has to be a parity of commitment of resources.
Right, and I think the key, from what I understand with the court, is judge and dedicated courtroom and staff and security, and we are listing that.
Yes.
And we have to do that. So, and to fill up the picture, I think having those additional details on the executive branch, just to understand. Again,
Okay.
that's subject to resources as well, so.
Oh, no, I completely get it. I mean, subject to resources, we're willing to live within those resources and assign the resources, right? I mean, we have been willing to do that. So I have no objection to leaving it in. I think if you take my point.
Yeah, I understand your point.
Thank you. Okay. Then this is just, and our Rutland School is still here, good, because to the extent, and we love the concept, and in an ideal world, a rapid accountability court docket coordinator would be wonderful. But we don't have a person with the time to take on another job, which would mean another person. And we don't have the money for that, to the extent, I mean, you'd be using up 20% of your resources on day one just to hire a person to do this. So we have been collecting data. The Judiciary has seen it. The Joint Oversight Committee has seen it. We are figuring out now how to put together how are people doing long-term data. And a lot of that is from executive branch sources. So we can get rearrest data from Valcor. We can get additional court data from DOC. Like, we can do that, and we are working on a way to do it. But to then turn this into, we need to bring another person to do this work, I think it's a great idea, but it's a 2-year program. And I don't know that your priority is hiring a data and operations coordinator. I mean, that's where I wouldn't prioritize the allocation of my resources. But if we can come up with some language that is flexible enough to sort of so when I looked at this list, number of defendants served, we can get that from the DSAS and the court. The number of cases resolved and types of outcome, we've been able to do that with DSAS. The number of defendants connected to services and types of services, that then is going to be sort of a, more of a deeper dive with AHS, I guess, to figure out where people ended up and how that happened. Some of them will be easy because they're in DOC custody. The number of times each defendant appeared in court for the docket, somebody is going to have to feed that to a coordinator regardless. So I don't know. I mean, that's fine as a data point, but somebody needs to be keeping that to feed it to the coordinator. I just don't know why hiring a coordinator.
So I think.
So you see what I
See, yeah, the
extra
concept.
person, we can collect all of this data, except for maybe that one. So somebody will have to get us that. Probation furlough violations, number of defendants charged with a new offense. We can get all of that through DOC, our sort of DMV public safety apparatus. We can learn what we can learn about the individuals in the human services system. So we can commit to getting that data, but I wouldn't want to, and we have done that. So that's the other thing, to the extent a lot of this has been organic, to the extent we are using junior staff to do a lot of this work is great for them because it gives them an opportunity to sort of have this kind of exposure. But it's hard to figure out from my perspective how to codify that requirement. You can put down your data collection objectives and, we'll figure out how to get that information and report it. But I mean, to sort of give this responsibility to another person, I just see that as one more thing.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And so the main reason for that was to specify somebody to collect that.
I know, and I get that.
Another idea of who the somebody should be or what, I don't think we should just say, if we just say for each accountability docket, there will be the following data, we have to tag somebody with that responsibility.
Right.
And I'm open, I think you're open to
Who that is.
who that is, if you.
Right. So I do kind of hate to just obligate the governor's office to do that because.
Right.
But we are doing it now. So let me sort of take that back, see what the thinking is. We're obviously doing it now. We've started to do it to the extent we can get our arms around the Rutland data. So that's it's not an insurmountable hurdle. And we've started on the Chittenden data and how to bring to all of this other information together. So let me just noodle on that a little bit and see what might be appropriate for who, how we bell the cat.
Right. Yeah, well, that sounds good.
So then, oh yeah, I had the same observation about the fiscal 26 money.
Right.
There is 500 in there now. I don't know what you're anticipating to put in there for fiscal 27, but that's.
And so we'll have to also, for the report, if we don't have a docket coordinator, we'll have to designate somebody.
To report.
So you could think the same thing for that one.
Yes, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. So that's, I guess, it for me. It's, do you have any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much for going over this. Zach and then Angela.
So one of the things is one of the things I'm very mindful about this amendment in particular is to make sure that we strike the right balance between interested parties. And so and again, I don't mean to ask this in a very pointed way, but I'm wondering if you feel that the amendment is overly deferential to any one party, maybe the judiciary in particular.
I think, honestly, if the section 33 can be clarified, that this plan is a collaborative process to which the stakeholders, and these stakeholders in the first paragraph have agreed. I'm thinking it can move forward like that.
Okay.
I mean, it is definitely, and I do appreciate the chair's made this point a couple of times, the need for flexibility in this process and the organic nature of the way it grew was important. And I actually appreciate that about the reporting requirement, which is what do we learn from this one and how do we move forward with best practices? I think that's important. But I I think if 33 works the way it was described, that's a way to move forward.
Thank you.
So just a couple specific language questions. On page 2, line 4, you mentioned replacing proportional with replicable.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's a third option, because to me replicable means, you know, exactly the same.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering, and proportional was trying to get at like the right plan for the county, like the needs of the particular county.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you have any thoughts on something that captures that idea, but I understand what you're saying, that, you know, proportional is,
Not at the holder.
yeah. I mean, I hope it would be
Just
database,
Can
but
it just be each county that determines that employing a rapid accountability docket modeled on the pilot project, something along those lines?
The finding is the General Assembly finds each county that determines employing a model takes into account the unique needs of the county and now shall have the opportunity to operate a docket. So what's your priority in that long sentence? Is it each county?
I think it's that the county, every county has the opportunity to use, you know, to have a rapid accountability docket that takes into account the unique needs of that county.
Yeah, I think that's,
So then, yeah, maybe just.
you don't need to refer to,
Yeah,
right? I mean, we have language about the model in the prior paragraphs.
right.
And I think, and I think Tom is making a good point that has the additional language that takes into account the unique needs and resources of the county that.
Yeah, so, yeah, we were saying we could just take out, well, I think you could just take out that whole, like, it could say each county that determines that employing a rapid accountability docket that takes into account the unique.
But I still think you need to say
resources.
modeled on the pilot project and at least.
Okay.
So modeled on.
I mean, yeah. I mean, this is just a finding, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so then my other question was, it's not in a finding, so same page, line 20.
What page?
Page 2.
Okay.
So I believe, Jay, you suggested getting rid of for a limited period of time.
Mhm.
And if I understood what you were saying correctly, you were referring to the targeted resources or resources targeted at the individuals, but I think this line is actually referring to resources targeted to the courts or to the prosecution. So that is for a limited time.
Involve individuals with multiple documents.
It's the surge.
Resources. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Reducing the number of pending cases that involve individuals with multiple dockets by providing targeted resources,
Like
not to the defendants, but
Right.
to the system.
Yeah. Would it help to say that?
I mean, I don't know what limited time means.
Yeah.
I mean, you define all that in your.
Later.
Yes.
Yeah, actually
90 days.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know why you need it, but, by providing targeted
Okay.
resources, right? I mean, we know, and I think, Defender General Valerio is correct when he says you could in some ways predict the outcome that by devoting resources to the problem, you can actually move the needle on the problem. It's just how you define the problem. If you're talking about moving cases, you can devote resources and move cases. If you're defining the problem as really getting at the root causes of the problematic behavior, then you have to that's a different question. Yeah. But yes, so I don't know why you need it, but sure, you're right. It is just
You
for,
really don't, but I just wanted to make sure that.
yeah, I appreciate that. Yes, you're right.
Any other questions? Here. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
So I think the plan could be that, we'll have Michelle implement, I don't think there's folks okay with those changes. I mean, it'd be better to see them all. So we'll have Michelle do that. We'll distribute that and I'll ask Court and Jay and Kim to weigh in just electronically of whether you want to weigh in more. And perhaps we can even come back for a straw poll on this later this afternoon and get this done. I did want to ask one question I'll start with reports and then ask Kim as well. And that is with respect to the Rapid Accountability Docket Coordinator, if you have any input on that.
Kim would like to go first, and I do have some input, but I'll defer to the SA's office first.
Well, as the record to make on this part with 6 and charts, as I testified earlier, do you think it's critical that we gather this information? I don't necessarily think it needs to be a standalone position, like a full-time position. What I'm concerned about is that Zach Waite, our special prosecutor, did the majority of this and then did work with the governor's office, who provided support to make the graphs and, put the data all together in a visible way. Not every prosecutor is going to be able to do that. Like, we can't, I'm concerned about us holding that water in every space. We definitely are part of it, and we're part of gathering that data and sharing it, but we need, I think it'd be incredibly helpful if there's one person overseeing that, but where that person needs to live or come from, we're completely flexible. If you'd like to give us another position, we'll happily take it to have somebody do that, or whether it's with the judiciary or with AHS, we do think it's critical for us and for you all to have that. So it's just a question of where we can pull that from.
Yeah, so Jay, and then
Just some clarity on how that comes together. So with Zach, it's true, he maintained a spreadsheet and he kept it updated in real time. So it's all the names, it's the number of offenses, and then it's the status, active or closed or warrant or whatever. So, and then there is a real-time update of each case, right? We in Rutland, our office provided Rutland with the templates, the spreadsheet with the columns. And it's a matter of, if we can't get if the data coordinator can't get that information from the prosecutor in the first instance, then I don't see how useful a data coordinator is. So to the extent a prosecutor can fill out a spreadsheet in real time, capture the updates of the case, I guess I don't understand how else a data coordinator is going to get that information.
If I can respond to that. We're not saying that we wouldn't provide the data, and if it is clear that that is part of the designated deputy attorney's position to do, we absolutely, we need to get that data. We're also making other suggestions for additional data to collect, and I don't think the designated deputy state's attorney is necessarily going to be able to follow those furlough violations. Like, that's where the central person's be able to say, prosecutor, where's your data for the week? DOC, any data for us? That's where it's hard for that to live solely with.
Okay, and I don't think it should move.
From where it lives, we're very flexible, but we do think it's important.
okay, yes.
So, line 20 on page 5 has 2 duties for this coordinator. It's to track data and assist in the deployment of resources. So the data, that I agree with that'll be figured out, but that's not a huge issue. What we saw in Shindig is that we've heard about Zach Waite. Zach Waite was the guy who was picking up the phone. He was making calls. He was doing things that really led to the success of that program. He was working, as I understood it, with the governor's office. So that resource of having him to work with the governor's office, but we have this plan or that resource, he was critical through that action. And so I understand that there may be funding, budgets, and other issues for whether there's a person who can do that. But the reality is, just like treatment courts, there's a coordinator who helps people with treatment. And what I understood Zach was doing at times was he was literally on the phone saying, can you get over here? Or let's do this. And that's what I see this position as too, not just that. And so that aspect of it, I think, is critical to have someone, because otherwise, is it going to fall to the prosecutor to make the phone call? Is it going to fall to the defense attorney, the court clerk, AHS? So having someone to spearhead that is usually helpful.
If I could mention, Representative Sproul indicated that, understanding now that this is a proposal for this position, that's something that he would be happy to discuss in terms of what the needs were. Before, when he asked about the needs, it was limited to basically, the judge, the court staff, the admin expenses, et cetera. But it sounded like he was open to seeing what that, the monies would be. In terms of the data, we would, in our normal course, provide a number of these data points, and that's what we provided the state's attorney when we get the information from the state's attorney. Some we would not, DOC would need to provide it, for example, but I think as Judge somebody said, that's, I think, fairly doable. But it does sound like certainly, especially to have continuity among the several counties, to have a point person who could be responsible for ensuring that the information that you all need and that we can benefit from.
If I could, it changes the dynamic from here's how we did it to here's how we can do it. And I have the experience in it. If this individual is in Rutland County today and we're working on Washington County tomorrow, he has the ability or she has the ability to say, well, here's the people, I've got them all here. They're not handing off a folder saying, here, go talk to these people. This is who you're going to need to connect.
That's a question of anyone in the room, and it's not to, I know we're not, well, actually, maybe we do make, anyway, I'll just ask the question. Is there such a thing as like stipended position, like stipends, like
Contractual.
like
Temporary.
schools have to deal with this stuff. I'm thinking of schools have to deal with this type of stuff. We put stuff on schools all the time and tell them to figure it out. And they work within their employee pool and offer a stipend, and someone does it on top of what they're already doing, but they're paid for it.
But a lot of people.
So
I don't
how about Matt Valerio's recommendation of having tasking Prime Research Group as the entity, but they will only be doing the data part. So that
Yeah, the
doesn't- that
coordinator, I think the coordination is really important.
Right.
And you guys have a budget on the floor right now, right? I
It's
mean,
already passed.
Oh.
The Senate.
So I just, it is great that, there is no money, right? You all are a little bit aware of that. And so I appreciate it. I guess from my perspective, this is a solution in search of a problem. We have been collecting the data. We will continue to collect the data. If this becomes a problem and everybody loves the accountability court so much that we need a data coordinator, maybe we think about hiring the person at that time.
But it's not a data coordinator.
Well, and whatever, from my perspective,
The
what
docket
what
coordinator.
I heard was that person was with each then the state's attorney to make those calls that Zach was making. So that's the other thing. What is that role that Tom just articulated? I don't know if it's the role you were thinking, but I do think that then you are talking about a more full-time person, and then you are struggling with what exactly it is that person does. But I think that if the issue is data collection, right now data is being collected
So let me,
and presented in a way that I rarely see in any committee, in real time.
So I don't think it's the data. I think it's about the coordinating of the services. And I really think that there's a point here that if we're going to move this rapid accountability docket from county to county, having some kind of experience moving from county to county with that feels really important. So
We have AHS.
just let me finish. If you have like a Zach Waite that's appointed for each county and they basically have to rebuild the system each time, then you're kind of losing a lot of that institutional knowledge that could be effectively deployed in the next county where it's going to happen. So I think that's a big part of the coordinator that doesn't have anything to do with data. And I think that, so,
Yes, that would be very nice. In each county, it is going to be different because of the different needs of each county. You're gonna have a separate prosecutor. I mean, you could very well ask for a special prosecutor to be appointed by the governor for every county, right? That would really maintain the continuity you need across the state. But actually it wouldn't, because in each county, you're gonna have different vendors. We're gonna have similar issues to the one raised in Chittenden that you're gonna have to address in that county. And you're gonna have all different service providers. We're gonna have to figure out how they're gonna staff the courtroom. You do have right now a woman, and you met her in hearing, Nicole DeStasio, who is the AHS coordinator, working on coordinating services. So that's happening. Really, I mean, in Rutland, it has been a huge challenge, but they are doing it. So so you could, again, I'm not really sure what this person is then meant to do, data or this, or both, but I feel like this is, you can throw a body at this and we can figure out what the best use is, or we could wait to see where the gap is and address it.
So there's, all right, which brings me to the question. So there's $500,000 BAA, that's Agency of Administration, right? So if whoever's working on this in this group, the state's attorney convenes a group and they are figuring out their needs. If they need to have a coordinator, they could ask for that funding, or DSAS could presumably say, I got an idea, I've got a person who can help us with this. We need $50,000 of that 500,000. That's the way that could happen, right? Is that how that works?
Theoretically.
So,
I mean, it
so
was
just to
never-
keep it open, like you were saying,
Oh,
keep it open
I
and they
mean,
could.
part of it is, it was never intended to be a piggy bank for the stakeholders. I've heard the Defender General make a pitch for this contractor. Everybody could make a pitch for more staffing, right? I mean, everybody wants more staffing. So that yes, you could, to answer your question, but it was never intended to be a piggy bank. It was supposed to cover the costs that were incurred for the operation of the court.
Right, and if it's determined through this process that would be a good use of that limited funds, that it's not prohibited.
Right.
Even if we take this out, it's not prohibited. I still need to be able to identify an entity or person responsible for that.
Yes, and I
data.
said it would get
Yeah,
that.
so,
Yeah.
No, I just had one question. I can certainly appreciate, people's opinions as far as needing a coordinator goes, and whether data or whatever, moving it from county to county. How did it move from Chittenden County to Rutland without a coordinator? That's kind of an open. We don't
Well, we had meetings, we had things, but I would actually offer the fact that we're hearing how there seems to now be dissatisfaction with the plan that everybody came up with in Rutland. That maybe if there was an actual coordinator, we'd have someone to say, yeah, this is what everybody agreed to. And here's the way it went. I mean, I think that the fact that we spent so much time hearing about why it's looking different and the disputes about it right now, I think a coordinator probably might have been able to resolve some of those issues. It's broken up.
Some of the new language, that should resolve some of those issues too.
Hopefully.
Ideally, yes.
Right.
And the Rutland stakeholders are meeting as we speak, in fact.
What's that?
The Rutland stakeholders are meeting as we speak.
Oh, okay.
They meet regularly and looking at it, including information that came to light, in this room. So that's, from what I understand, is all being addressed, including HS and everybody that was involved in the initial meetings.
And for treatment court, that's been such a vital role, right, in terms of even making the connections.
Absolutely.
So, right.
Well, yeah, but it sounds, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there is a person, from AHS doing, I think, that part of the service coordination, right?
So I think taking out the bit about the coordinator doesn't preclude that from happening. It's I think ultimately my point on that. And we probably shouldn't say that they have to have one at this point. It's kind of, it'd be nice, but unless I want to go and talk to Trevor and see if they want to add an FTE, I don't know, to the defender, not defender, I think that's prosecuting.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's a full-time job, but.
Yeah, well, it probably is not.
Right. But I would just say, I can get you some language.
I'll do it.
Data.
I need a job.
If that helps you get comfortable with this issue, But if it's more, I'm not sure how we can do that.
No, I understand that. If it's the assisting with the deployment resources, that's, you know, the point person concept. But we kind of have to decide this fast, if we're gonna either do this afternoon or first thing Tuesday morning.
Can't some vague language go in there that will like the, so that it doesn't have to be
How about
like,
this? How about this? We'll change the shall to may. Line 19,
Where are you?
we're gonna change shall to may.
What page?
Uh,
Oh, yes, page 5.
Page 5, line 19. We're changing shall to may.
Yay.
Everybody happy? I still need to have the different person for the data coordinator though. I mean, for the data, so I'll still wait for you, from you.
So did you take out to track data and assist, or would you just,
No, I
Keep it in there.
keep it in May. It's okay.
right, keep it at May, but would it be made to designate to assist with
So-
the deployment of resources because you're gonna identify someone to track data?
All right, so my suggestion is on the data at this point, so we also don't have to wait. I'm sure Jane will get back to me quickly, but is that we just say for each accountability docket, the following data will be tracked. It'll be passive voice. I won't say who it is yet. Just to, I mean, I don't like that, but this does have to go over to the other body still, and we can by then. So we'll just kind of use passive voice, but in this particular instance,
and it's
Yeah.
more detailed than this.
yeah. Following data will be tracked.
That's cross your fingers legislation.
You know,
What'd you say?
I like that.
Cross your fingers legislation.
how many of our bills don't
A little bit of that.
Plenty of our bills though have not had a model, but through the
No, right.
All right, so I really appreciate everybody's
Yeah,
work on
been
this
great.
and the help on this, and I think this goes a long ways towards what Eric McGuire started us off on. And I really appreciate that. And like I say, we'll have a version sent out to everybody because there's still a possibility we can just wrap this up today if possible. Crossing my fingers. So we don't have another half a dozen amendments coming to us over the weekend.
Yeah, everyone has more time.
So I do need to get, yeah, no, I think Winters, he went through this. Oh, he did? Yeah.
Over there, are we still live?
Oh, he did.
Still live, do
that's fine.
live.
So we will probably get off the floor again, to take a, straw poll on, or take a final look and see if we're okay with it, and have a straw poll. We also need to hear from Gina Galfini
Probably do that at the same
at
time.
the same time on her unconstitutional amendment. So we are adjourned